Hi, we are live on Facebook. Hello, friends. Warm wishes for the year 2021. I hope that this year has less surprises as compared to what was in store for us in the year 2020. We are going to take up a very important topic of discussion today, which all of you can see in your screens. It's about heart. So we're going to start about talking regarding our hearts. Chest pain, does it scare you? Well, it's a stupid question, I know, if I say that chest pains don't scare anyone. It's very scary because we really don't know what does the pain indicate, what is there in store for us, whether it is a heart problem or something else. But traditionally, across the world, people have been trained to be very positive about the chest pain. Before I take you further pertaining to more insights on chest pain, I would like to share something interesting with you. We all have been virtually social in last few months, ever since the lockdown came into being, ever since the COVID-19 pandemic started. So this is an interesting analysis from brandwatch.com, which is a website, US-based website, which says that red heart is the third most commonly used emoticon or emoji, as we call it. So this shows that heart is important, not just from the perspective of our human body, but also in terms of expression. So we must address this, and that's why we are here today, to help you with some more information, which is very vital and important regarding the heart. Now, why is heart important traditionally? I'll just read out a few sentences for you, my friends. We all say the person has a big heart or he has a big heart. We never say that he has a big liver, right? Same goes on and say that we refer to people with great attitude towards life as they've got a heart of gold. But I haven't heard anybody saying that the person has brain of a gold. I'm not saying that brain isn't important, but traditionally, if we look at all the cultures around, heart has been given a more pious or a more lucrative state as compared to the other organs. Maybe because drawing a heart is easiest. You just have to make, even a third grade child can make a heart without any effort, which may not be the case with other organs. And last, heart of stone is something which is very commonly used for people who are not very responsive, who are callous, or whatever be. But I haven't heard anyone saying that person has stomach of stone. So this was just to give you a bit of insight into how important our heart is. Well, on the positive side of it, across the world, the first thing that we all believe the moment we have some kind of a chest discomfort is that possibly it is gastric. It has nothing to do with heart attack, or it has nothing to do with a heart problem. This and many other things, we are going to bust a lot of doubts. We are going to share with you what makes heart attack or what makes chest pain more severe and when you should be worried about it. So friends, I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Sandeep Agarwala. Welcome, Dr. Sandeep, to our show. He is our cardiac surgeon at Zydus Hospitals. He's going to enlighten us on the aspect of chest pain and its associated symptoms. And when we should be worried about running away to an emergency room. So don't miss out. Please watch the session carefully. There is a lot in store for you for the next 35 minutes. Dr. Sandeep, I would straight away start with a few questions which our viewers had asked in the previous session that we did. First would be, is it safe to ignore a chest pain? And if yes, what symptoms one should be looking for not to rush to an emergency room?
Okay, so first of all, a very good evening to all our viewers today, those in Africa, those across India today. Wish you all a very happy new year. Hope 2021 pans out to be a better year for all of us. We've had a lot of struggles last year with the coronavirus, and things now seem to be settling down, and gradually life is coming back to normal. So coming back to a very relevant topic on the first day of the year, which I think Himanshu asked today, when is chest pain significant enough that it should not be ignored? So, as we all know, whenever a person gets chest pain, the first and foremost worry is could it be a cardiac pain? Because obviously, if it's a cardiac pain, it has a potential to cause a lot of damage, not only to your heart, but it can suddenly stop and give you a heart attack or a cardiac arrest as well. So, prime most important thing is not to miss cardiac pain whenever you are getting pain. Now, generally, a person who has been getting symptoms of chest pain for some time can most of the times distinguish a cardiac from a non-cardiac pain by analyzing whether the symptoms are related to any exertion or no. If the chest pain is related to exertions, for example, if you're walking up an incline, or if you're walking climbing up the stairs, or if you're running, or if you're doing something heavy physically and it comes on, and if you take a break and if you take rest for 5-10 minutes, it disappears, then it is more likely to be a cardiac symptom. So any symptom which comes with exertion and disappears on rest is more likely to be cardiac chest pain. Similarly, some people may not get a typical cardiac chest pain like heaviness in the chest while exerting. Sometimes they just get out of breath more than usual when they do some climbing of stairs, or they are walking fast or walking up an incline. That also can be a symptom which is related to cardiac ischemia, or that may indicate some blockages in the heart vessels as well. So it is not necessary that people with cardiac pain may get typical chest pain or angina. They may get shortness of breath as well. And sometimes a lot of people can get atypical pain, pain in the jaw, pain between the shoulder blades. Quite a few times they may not have any pain, especially in diabetics. They may just directly present with a heart attack. So, when a person has been having symptoms for some period of time, usually exertional symptoms which come on and disappear with rest are likely to be of cardiac origin. Now, there are certain typical symptoms which would suggest that this is just a pain coming from the chest wall, which what we label as a muscular pain. So, if it is a dull aching pain which is just localized, it's been there for 2-3 days, continuously it has been there, then it's very unlikely that somebody is having a heart attack at that time. Usually, a heart attack symptoms will worsen, and if the pain related to cardiac condition doesn't settle down in half an hour or 1 hour's time, then probably the patient would soon get too unwell to sit at home. So he would, in any case, land up in an emergency room seeking help. So if it is a dull, continuous pain which has been there for quite a few days, then it's very unlikely it might be cardiac. And secondly, something which is happening on the wrist, when somebody is not doing anything and it starts, then again it's likely to be a muscular pain. But obviously other factors also need to be considered, whether a person is having any risk factors which could lead to coronary disease. For example, if it's an elderly patient, if it's a diabetic, if it's somebody who has been having high blood pressure or high cholesterol for a very long time, or somebody who has been smoking or has been taking tobacco, or maybe has a very strong family of heart attacks, family history of heart attacks, in that case, the threshold to investigate for a cardiac cause is very low. Because obviously, if you have one or two risk factors, then you tend to be at a higher risk of getting cardiac disease. So, in those patients, there would be very low threshold to check them or evaluate them for cardiac conditions.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. So I'm sure our viewers, at least this basic information is going to help you if you have symptoms of chest pain which increase with activity, or you have a family history of the disease, or you are either diabetic, a compulsive smoker, or has any other cardiac condition which is known, it is always better not to wait for too long and reach the emergency room in your closest hospital to make sure that you are able to manage yourself and you are handled well. So it's best not to avoid when you have any of these symptoms. Moving on to the next question, Dr. Sandeep. Assuming I have a chest pain and though I know, as we all, as I mentioned earlier, that the first time we have any chest pain symptoms, we feel that oh, it must be gas. रात को कुछ खाने में आ गया होगा या कुछ ठंडा पिया होगा, उसकी वजह से है. So we normally look at these symptoms, but I'm a little more intelligent, so probably I managed to reach the emergency room, and मेरा ECG होता है, which shows some funny changes. My cardiologist friend advises me कि यार तुम angiography करा लो. Why to take a chance? Healthy शरीर है और 40 plus हो तो better है. We should rule out. Now, two questions to it rather. So how important it is for me to listen to my cardiologist? Please, my friends, don't take it otherwise or offensively. I'm talking to you, I'm talking to all of you as a normal person and not somebody who's been in the medical field for a while. And is it right to just ignore everything and just carry on if I don't have any major symptoms?
So Himanshu, I think the most important thing is if any pain which is causing you anxiety or is concerning you, then it is better to get it evaluated, because as I said, if it's of cardiac origin, it has the potential to create disasters as well. If it is something which is not related to heart, at the most you'll end up getting investigated, and if heart comes normal, then you can be at peace that this is not going to damage you. A gastric pain has got a very little potential to cause life-threatening complications. So yes, if you have a pain which has caused you enough concern and anxiety, and you have landed up in an emergency room of a hospital to get it investigated, then I think it is better to listen to the people who are treating you. And more so if a cardiogram has been done and it has picked up changes. And if you have risk factors, as you said, somebody who's in an elderly age group maybe, or has diabetes, or has high cholesterol, or strong family history, or tobacco, then these are risk factors which increase the chances of a cardiac condition being detected. So yes, one should go with the flow, and if angiography has been advised, then he should get it done. There is no doubt about it, because obviously even if angiography comes normal, it is a very reassuring thing that nothing is wrong with your heart. But if angiography does pick up blockages, then it can be treated in time without any complications happening, with good results and with a very low risk of the procedure.
So as per Dr. Sandeep, it is better that I listen to the cardiologist if I have any discomfort, and rather than listening to my own self. Moving on to the next question, Dr. Sandeep, I'm just sharing my screen, which is a question which is very, very commonly asked by people, by patients, their families. Chest pain, heart attack, what do I do? I have been given options: angioplasty, bypass surgery. I don't want to do bypass surgery because I feel that it's not the best of the things to do to open my chest and repair what is damaged. So my question is directly relating to this. There may be situations where the cardiologist would advise कि आपके हार्ट में blockages हैं, एंजियोग्राफी से पता चला है और आपको एंजियोप्लास्टी करानी चाहिए, जिसमें स्टेंट डाल के ब्लॉक्स को खोल दिया जाएगा. Now, obviously, everybody has probably the time and the opportunity to take another opinion if at all you want it. But in current world, when there is no clear demarcation, everybody would have their own choices. So I want to understand that, does the procedure of bypass surgery, is it, first of all, how safe it is in case there are multiple blocks? How exactly does a cardiologist or a cardiac surgeon take a call on what should be the further line of treatment in case there are heart blocks? In simple language for our friends, if you can explain.
Right. This is a very common misconception which we have, that angioplasty and coronary bypass surgery are very competitive in each other in nature. It's like, we are competing against the cardiologists. The cardiac surgeons are competing against the cardiologists, or the cardiologists competing against the cardiac surgeons to do a procedure, either an angioplasty or a cardiac surgeon. To my understanding, and that is what the real world is, that both have their own places, and both have good things to offer to, and both have their own risk profile which is there, and the long term results are also good with both of them, provided the patients have been selected properly for it. Now, when a patient comes to us in an emergency room with an ongoing heart attack, and this come within a reasonable time frame of 6 hours, within the 6 hours time frame from when he started getting symptoms, that is the time when probably a cardiologist and a cath lab facility, if it's available in the hospital ER where the person has landed up in, he would advise emergency angiography to be done. And in that situation, if an emergency angiography does show a blockage which is causing cardiogram to change or the symptoms to appear, or there is evidence of ongoing heart attack, then the best thing is to submit yourselves to whatever the cardiologist suggests. If they suggest that the vessel needs to be opened up immediately and urgently by putting in a angioplasty, or by doing an angioplasty by opening with a balloon and placing a stent, then perhaps that is the thing to get it done, provided you are well within your time frame of 6 hours from the onset of symptoms, because this technically what we call it as primary angioplasty in myocardial infarction. So this is angioplasty, which is done as a rescue procedure, that you have come in time and there has not been much damage to the pump of the heart which has happened, and opening the artery in time will prevent any further damage. In fact, it may prevent any damage from happening at all. So somebody comes with an acute heart attack and the vessel gets opened up within the time frame, then the chances are that his heart's pump would still remain normal. So this is a life-saving procedure, and a person who has an ongoing heart attack should not think about taking a second opinion, should have the trust in the treating doctors, and should just go ahead if suggested by the cardiologist to get an angioplasty done in acute heart attack. They should go ahead and get it done, because that's for their safety and that's for their benefit, and that has been proven to be no doubt um, a lifesaver in all the situations. But there is another situation where patients walk into the OPD because of symptoms being there for some period of time. So these are the patients who have been having angina or angina equivalent symptoms like shortness of breath for some period of time, maybe a week, maybe 10 days, maybe a month, a couple of months. And these are the patients who can think over where they want to get their procedure done, whether they want to follow a cardiologist's advice or whether they want to have a second opinion. So they have enough time on their hand to take second opinions. But by and large, the rule is when there are multiple blockages, and if there are the kind of blockages are such which cannot be opened up with angioplasty, or the blockages there is too much of calcium in them, or they are at such locations where doing angioplasty would cause more risk, the procedure would become risky and the long-term results will not be good enough, a surgery is usually offered. Typically diabetic patients, typically triple vessel disease, where all three arteries of the heart show blockages, where there are long segment blockages, or where one or two or more of the arteries are 100% blocked, or where the left-sided artery, the main artery of the left side of the heart is blocked. There typically surgery is indicated. Also, we have the literature tells us where diabetics are there, or where the pumping of the heart has come down due to previous heart attacks. These are the patients likely to benefit by surgery much more in the longer run. So there is a spectrum of patients who may benefit from angioplasty. There is also a bigger spectrum of patients who may benefit from surgery. It depends from case to case. Both the modalities of treatment are not competitive in nature. The aim of both modalities is same, to increase the blood supply of the heart by either opening the blockage by putting in a balloon and a stent, or by bypassing it using various veins and arteries which have been provided in the body as care. So either of them can be done, can be considered. The risk profile depends on the patient's profile as well. And obviously the long-term results would depend on the choice of procedure and also selection, whether it has been tailored to the particular patient or not. So one size doesn't suit all. It
Right.
has to be tailored according to the patient's findings and needs.
So, friends, as Dr. Sandeep explained, that one size doesn't fit all. It is patient dependent. It is how emergency a situation is and what is the best option that can be offered. Both the modalities, the end result is same. They are basically revascularization techniques to make sure that your heart is getting the blood, what's necessary again. So that's what the whole fundamental is. The basis is listen to your doctor, what they tell you, have faith in them, and go ahead with the plan. Both the modalities in current world are very safe and are practiced largely with extremely good outcomes. Dr. Sandeep, now coming to surgery, जिसको bypass surgery जिससे ज्यादातर लोग डरते हैं घबराते हैं, uh, how would you explain, being a cardiac surgeon yourself, how safe is bypass surgery in the current world medicine? Secondly, any new techniques which have been developed which make sure that whatever surgery is being done, the bypass surgery is being done the way it is done, the life of the surgery is as good as what probably angioplasty or a stent would give us or would give a patient, because a lot of patients have these questions that, I'm getting a stent done, probably in case it gets blocked, I'll always have an option to probably go in for surgery. This is what people ask. So I don't know how realistic is that, but these are the questions which people have asked, so I'm just putting it across to you.
So definitely, whenever a bypass surgery is being advised or a patient, is told that yes, you have multiple blockages and you need a bypass surgery, it is something which creates a lot of anxiety, not only for the patient but also for the caregivers, for the close ones, for the family. They feel that bypass surgery is a very, very big surgery and it's going to have a very big risk, and people are not going to recover back from that surgery, and probably that is the last. After that they won't remain active in their life, they won't be able to get back to their routine activities or their work. So the scare factor, the fear factor of bypass surgery is still there. Perhaps 15, 20, 30 years back that was true, but I think the scenario has changed dramatically in last 10, 15 years time. Currently, what we see for a patient in a planned surgery where everything is okay, all the reports are good, the risk of surgery is hardly 0.5%. So almost more than 99% or 99.5% patients are unlikely to have any problems during the surgery or after the surgery. So if I simplify it, almost after every 100 patients there is hardly a patient or so who may land up with problems. So considering that risk, the risk is very, very small of the surgery as such. Mainly, if I have to say, as I was saying earlier, each patient is different. So the risk of a surgery, of a coronary bypass surgery, mainly comes from the condition of the heart itself. Sometimes, due to the previous heart attacks, the pumping of the heart has come down significantly. These are the patients who may have a higher risk of surgery. But it all depends if there is enough wall thickness of the pump left behind, that by revascularizing, by increasing the blood supply of the pump, we are going to make an increase in the pumping of the heart from maybe 20-30% to 40-50%. Then obviously the risk is worth taking, because it will not only take care of the symptoms, it will also give a survival benefit in the long run, especially for younger patients who are less than 70, less than 65, who have probably another 15, 20 years of life to go, of active life to go. So these are the patients, even though the risk maybe in a particular patient, it may be more than 0.5% to maybe 1 or 2% or 3%. But if it is, if the pumping of the heart or the thickness of the walls of the heart are such that they are preserved, and there is a good chance that by revascularizing, by doing a procedure which would increase the blood supply of the heart, there is a good chance that 6 months down the line, the pumping may improve and that may give a survival benefit also. So yes, the fear is definitely there. Obviously, angioplasty is a far less invasive procedure. Patients get admitted, the procedure gets done in half an hour, 1 hour time, and then probably by in a day or two they are back at home and they get back to their routine activities. But at the same time, surgery is not that high risky that one should just shy away completely from it and just refuse it without understanding it. Usually, most of our patients, when they come in for surgery, they by second day they are walking around in the ICU, and by third day they are back in the room, and fourth, fifth day they are almost on the verge of getting ready for discharge. Usually almost 95, more than 95% of our patients are discharged by seventh day or eighth day after all the wounds have been checked. And when they are discharged, they are fully independent. They are able to take care of themselves. They are able to climb stairs. They can do everything except what they are suggested is that they shouldn't lift anything heavy or they shouldn't drive a vehicle for at least 1.5, 2 months. But apart from that, within a week's time, they are in a good condition to take care of themselves. So yes, on one hand, angioplasty, if you have it, you are, maybe walking around on second day, third day, and you can do activities much more earlier compared to a surgery. But sir, it's not that surgery will keep you bedridden for a month or so and you will not be able to recover. And usually, if you're well motivated, in 15, 20 days, all the checks have been done. Within a month's time, you can get back to your normal work as well. So the recovery process is not too bad. Uh, Usually, another fear which a lot of people have that surgery will have a lot of pain, but almost more than again 95% of our patients just go home on a simple paracetamol as a painkiller. So even though to our mind it appears that it's a very big surgery, it must be very painful, but just a simple paracetamol 3 times a day at the time of discharge, and that is enough to keep people mobile, pain-free, without any problem. So it's not as painful as what people perceive it to be. So risk of the surgery is small. The recovery, yes, it cannot be compared to angioplasty. Definitely, it takes a longer period of time to recover from an invasive procedure like bypass surgery. But yes, it can be done. It is manageable, and a lot of patients who undergo through the surgery afterwards, when they come to meet us and they tell us that they were worrying for no reason, so they don't anticipate, and once they have crossed that path, they feel that they were unnecessarily worrying about everything. So surgery has definitely become a lot more safe, a lot more controlled with newer techniques. Almost more than 95% of our coronary bypass surgeries are done on beating heart surgeries. Earlier, these surgeries were done on arrested heart technique. That means we used to use the heart-lung machine. We used to stop the heart and then do the bypass grafting. But now most of the surgeries are done without the help of a heart-lung machine. When the heart is still beating and we are stabilizing only a small area where we are constructing the bypass graft. So obviously the recovery is also much faster compared to the traditional means of surgery. So safety is there, and obviously recovery is definitely possible without any issues in majority of our patients. When you also mentioned if something new has come up, yes, a lot of new things are coming up, but I think cardiac surgery is one branch where safety is utmost. A lot of places people are starting to do robotic surgeries or surgeries through minimally invasive incisions, but these are meant only for a very few selected patients where it can be offered with equivalent level of safety compared to open surgery. And by and large, what I would see in my practice, I would say that still almost more than 99% of the patients are not fit for these kind of surgeries because obviously safety concerns come in. And obviously there's no point in doing this surgery if you're compromising the safety and also the long-term quality and outcomes of these patients. So it's better to go for these time-tested, evaluated, gold standard techniques which have stood the test of the time.
So one more thing I would like to just briefly, if you can share about the technique which is referred to as Lima Rima Y, if you can just brief our viewers on that.
Yeah, so during bypass surgery, we do construct the bypass grafts. Unlike angioplasty, we do not fiddle around with the blocks which are there in the native coronary arteries. We construct a new pathway to bypass that block and increase the blood supply to the heart. Now, these new pathways are created either by spare veins which are available in the body, either from the legs, or we take arterial grafts which can be either from the hand or from the chest wall itself. So traditionally, the gold standard again for using these grafts is one artery from behind the chest wall. Usually, the left internal mammary artery, known as lima, is taken out, and also depending on the number of grafts which we are planning to do, we take out the radial artery, that is the artery from the hand, rather the non-dominant hand, and also veins from the saphenous veins from the legs. So with these, usually we are able to construct multiple bypass grafts, maybe 3 grafts, 4 grafts. On an average, the number of grafts needed for a patient coming for bypass surgery is 4. So we are able to construct these grafts from a combination of these three arteries and veins and radial arteries. In certain patients who are younger group, who are much more fit, we can take arteries from inside the chest itself. So we can take both the internal mammary arteries, the left internal mammary artery, the lima, and the right internal mammary artery, the rema. So when we use only these two arteries to construct multiple grafts on the heart while doing a bypass surgery, it's called as a bilateral internal artery mammary Lima revascularization or Lima Rima Y technique. So essentially we create a Y using these two arteries, and with that we get extra length to construct the multiple anastomoses which help us to bypass multiple blockages in the heart. Usually what has been seen is these arterial grafts tend to last much longer. So the chances of it remaining open and patent beyond 15 years is much higher if we have used arterial grafts, either bilateral internal mammary arteries or the radial arteries. So generally our choice for Lima Rima Y or bilateral mammaries or arterial grafts is when the patient is much younger, maybe less than 60 years of age or in 50s. Usually the benefit of this surgery is not there in very elderly people. Beyond 70, 75, the benefit may not be there in terms of survival benefit
Right, right.
because they are more elderly, and if we consider average lifespan of 80, 85, then there is no point in overstretching the indication, because every thing has its own advantages and there may be some side effects as well. So in certain patients, especially in elderly beyond 70, 75, the bones may be osteoporotic. So if we have taken both arteries from inside the chest, they may cause some healing problems in the sternal, in the breastbone which is there. So it needs to be selected as per the patient. Yes, younger patients, arterial grafts should be preferred because they have a better long-term outcome. Elderly patients, if the patients are fit enough, it can still be offered without any problems.
So one more question here, that does it mean that when you are taking the grafts from the chest of the patient, and so there'll be no cuts on their limbs?
Yeah, that's definitely advantage of the procedure, that when you are
So
taking
there is
both
no
sides
harvesting done from the hands or
hands
the
and
legs.
from the legs. So that's from a patient's perspective. If we see purely from a cosmetic point of view, then there will be only one scar, and that is on the chest. And so for family, for the patient, yes, it may look very cosmetically appealing. But yes, there is much more science behind it rather than just the cosmetic part of it. Yes, cosmetically it is appealing. It's better to have less incisions in the body. If it can be done safely, if it is appropriate for the patient to which this technique is being offered, then it should be done. There is no doubt about it. But yes, I would not say that it's a technique for all the patients every time.
So now we come to the last question of today's session, which has a lot to do with recovery. Our patients have patients or people those who are entrusted. Obviously, I have seen patients. The fact that I've been dealing with foreign patients at Xylus hospitals. We see our patients travel back comfortably within 2 weeks of getting operated. So that's, I've never seen that there has been any issue pertaining to the recovery. But obviously, for the people who have written to us, they want to know that does it take too long before you are able to do your things normally? That is, go to the washroom, take a bath, move around, go on a walk. And secondly, how long does it take before you are symptom free? The symptoms due to which you came in to do the bypass surgery, how long will it take before you are completely symptom free? And the third one, usually from the cardiac perspective, what are the medicines and for how long are they taken? Is it lifelong or it is not? And the follow-up requirement.
Okay. So first thing first, person gets operated for symptom relief in the first place. So obviously this is there at the back of the mind that how early will my symptoms go away?
Right.
Well, as soon as the blood supply is being restored back to the heart, symptoms should disappear. Now, if there have been only exertional symptoms, you will be able to test them out only when you are able to exert as much as you were doing before. So unless
Right.
you have had so severe symptoms that even walking from maybe your room to a bathroom is causing you chest pain, that will immediately go away after surgery. You will immediately realize a lot of people have chest pain immediately having after having a heavy meal, which is called as a postprandial angina. So sometimes, they if they have a heavy lunch, they feel a lot of discomfort, and for last 1 month or so, they've not had a proper lunch because they are scared of the chest pain. And that is a symptom which immediately disappears after surgery, or for that matter, even after angioplasty. So once a revascularization has been done, these symptoms of ischemia or symptoms of angina or symptoms of inadequate blood flow to the heart will immediately disappear. In cases of patients who've undergone surgery, there will be some amount of discomfort or chest pain which is coming out arising from the operation itself. And this pain usually takes around 1.5, 2 months to settle down completely and give a feeling of normalcy to the chest wall. The tenderness on the chest wall may be there, the altered sensation may be there for 1.5, 2 months, but that settles down eventually. As far as the activity level is concerned, the more the patient is motivated, they can do. We have had patients who have been walking around for half an hour, 45 minutes, even before discharge.
Right.
They're either walking around in the lobby itself, or when we discharge them from the hospital, they go home and they start walking around pretty fast. They've been climbing stairs. So it all depends on the person's individual motivation. There's nothing which is restricted from from our side. As a surgeon, I want the person to be as active as possible, and I tell them that more active you are, the faster will be your recovery. So after surgery, generally tendency is abhi to surgery hui hai, let me rest for another 1 month. No, that should not happen, because if you are in the bed, then obviously your recovery will be delayed. So you have to be very active. The more physically active you are, the faster you will recover. As we have been, I've been operating a lot of international patients which are known to you, which come via you, and we see a distinct difference between our domestic patients and international patients. Most of the international
Absolutely.
patients, they are upright, sitting, eating breakfast on the second day after the surgery, and third day they are back in the room, and fifth day they are ready for discharge. And then after discharge they come back here for a bone checkup after a week, and after that they are flown back, and they are all happy, all smiles from second day itself. Sometimes we wonder if whether they actually have any pain or no, but they
True,
are
true.
very strong mentally. They come here with a positive mind frame, so a positive mind frame definitely helps in the recovery of surgery as well.
Maybe that's also because of the fact that they are away from their home and they want to be back home soon.
Yeah.
So that's a very strong driving force, which many people have been telling you, where you have to tell them that, okay, wait for 4 more days or 5 more days,
Yeah,
let the
which is
wound be better
something.
and you can travel.
Sometimes you have to ask them to wait for 1 more week. They want to just go away after 1 week of surgery. So
Yeah,
that is
true.
another contrast. And probably they are mentally prepared also, because they're traveling so far, and it's there that they are coming here for a procedure. They have to go back in time. So But as I said, somebody who is here locally as well, but somebody is accepted that he needs surgery and he is going to come with a positive frame of mind, definitely we can see a distinct difference in the recovery of these patients.
So how about the follow-up of the patients and the medication which they are supposed to take from the cardiac perspective for a long-term or lifelong, whatever?
Yeah, so this is another misconception which some of our patients have. Some of them, when they meet us initially, they do ask us this question whether they need to continue medications after the procedure or not. But the answer to that is most of the medications will need to be continued. The blood pressure medications, the diabetes medications, the blood thinners will need to be continued for life. Their cholesterol lowering medications will need to be continued. If they have any modifiable risk factors like maybe smoking or tobacco chewing, that needs to be strictly curtailed if they have to live longer. And also, people tend to forget that this is a part, just a part of the entire treatment. Lifestyle modification has to be there. If people have been very irregular in their dietary habits, if they have not been exercising enough, that needs to be corrected, because the disease process does not go away by this operation or by angioplasty or by bypass surgery. The disease process, the process of forming blockages in the body is still there unless you are controlling the risk factors by doing exercises, by losing weight, by keeping cholesterol under control, by stopping tobacco or use of smoking, or taking all the medications and diet control. So these are all lifestyle modifications which have to be done if you have to ensure the longevity of the procedure that you have. So it's very important that people, just don't get a procedure done and then forget everything and get back to their original habits. That may not help them for long run.
Okay, so friends, we have a strong take-home message from Dr. Sandeep. It says that basically whatever we are going to do after surgery is going to make sure that how long the benefits of the surgery last with us. So you have to exercise. It just can't be that, okay, now I've undergone a heart surgery and there's nothing that's going to happen to my heart. That's not going to be the case. So we need to be careful. We need to follow the doctor's advice carefully. We need to watch our diets. We need to be exercising. And obviously, we need to stay happy. So with this, I would draw close to today's session. Thank you very much, all of you, for watching us. And I again wish you a very, very happy 2021. Stay healthy, keep walking, and be fit. So that's what we all can pray for. And obviously, we all have been looking forward to a better 2021 than what the 2020 was. Again, friends, thank you very much for joining us. I would now take your leave. Thank you, Dr. Sandeep, for joining us. For all those of you who have not been able to join us online today, being 1st of January, being your celebrations on the way or whatever at hospitals, we still continue to work. I would request you to visit our social media handles and fetch the session there. Thank you very much. Namaste.